joining. John here, software engineer with about 10 years of experience. And today I want to walk you through the basics, 9 keys of HTML. When you're learning to code, I recommend learning with web development. To learn web development, you are going to want to learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I recommend starting with HTML. And then the question comes, okay, I'm learning HTML, like what does that mean? Like what do I actually need to learn within HTML? How do I know that I'm done and ready to move on to CSS and JavaScript? That's what we're going to answer here. I think that there are basically 9 things that you need to know, and then you should sprint ahead right over to CSS and JavaScript after that. This is part of the Latterly curriculum, so I don't recommend that you learn HTML before some prior steps on the checklist. Specifically, you're going to want to know how to search first, how to use Google, how to use ChatGPT, and the other ideas contained in these search techniques. Some things that are really simple as doing Command or Control F and looking on a web page for Command F on Mac, switching operating systems. Just being able to do things like fairly confident. You know, being able to look on the page in front of you, or if you go over to the React docs, there's search and say like start a new project. Okay, this is how you start a new project. Stuff like this. You're going to want to know how to search before you dive into HTML. And that's pretty much it. Like pretty much searching is the main thing that you want to know before you come here. And now you can come over here. And this is in rough priority order. So the first thing you're going to want to know. Probably core syntax comes next. These get a little fuzzier about the order, but the last item is also last. So the first thing is, what does HTML mean? It means hypertext markup language. What does that mean? It's called a markup language, which is distinct from a Turing complete language. So you wouldn't be writing whole programs with this. You would be writing what we call markup. And that defines the structure of your web page. So all of the things here are defined with HTML. A title is a thing. Let me show you. Here I'm in the DevTools. I've right-clicked the page and I picked Inspect. There you can see Inspect. Now I've got to expand this skinny little heading right here. Okay. So back here you can see the website code, or at least the front-end website code, which is markup. So here we have a heading. Okay. Well, this is an H1, which means heading. Okay. And here we have a paragraph of text. It's a list item. Oh, sorry, this is not a paragraph. This, because it says 1, 2, 3, they're like in a list. So LI for list item inside of OL, which means ordered list. Here would be a paragraph of text. And you can see that that is the letter P for paragraph. All of this is HTML. This is what we mean when we say the structure of your website. Thanks for the likes. And why is it hypertext? Because it's more than text. So it includes text, like this is text, right? But HTML is more than text. So notice like this button over here is a green button. If you have used like Microsoft Word, you'll know about headings and bold and italics and font sizes. All of those are part of hypertext. They are rich formatting. So it's not just text, it's also the size of the text or the color of the text and the font of the text. All of these things can be included in HTML. So by more than text, we mean rich style, interactive elements. That would include like buttons. So in plain text, there's not like a button to click, right? So that's part of hypertext. Links, right, are a big part of websites. You need links to other websites. This is part of HTML. It's not part of plain text. It's part of hypertext. And invisible metadata meant for robots and not for you. So if I go over to Google and if I search for banana bread, you can see I've done this before. Here, this top result says that this is the best ever banana bread recipe. Shout out if you've seen Elf. It's like the best coffee in the world, right? This is the best one, so now you know. But if I go to this website and if I look on this web page, that text is nowhere on the page. Where is this information coming from? Well, it's in the metadata. So it's not in the page, it's about the page. That's what we mean by metadata. So a really good use case for HTML metadata is Google search results. This would be called the page title, and this is a meta description. It's a description about the page. Okay, so all of those things are hypertext, not text. That's why we call it hypertext markup language. So now you know. Now you know what it means. So now that you know what it means, and you kind of know what it's for already, just based on what it means, okay, we're going to make websites with it. We're going to make websites with it, and it's going to let us do things like show up in Google results, interact, like interactive elements. I told you about buttons, but even this thing where I'm typing right here is an interactive element. It means the user is doing something. In plain text, that doesn't exist. But now we can see, like, we kind of naturally know why I would want that, right? I want to interact with the website so that I can do a search, or so that I can log in, or if I'm on like a recipe website, I can click around and see all the various recipes and search for recipes. So this is the interactivity that we want from HTML. And but now the question becomes like, how do I do that? Okay, now I know what it is. I kind of know what it's for, but how do I do that? Now we're on to core syntax. And here I'll show you a fun trick. So we have the laterally trial by fire. So you can go over here to the standard checklist, go watch the trial by fire video. There will be a link to in the description. And that'll walk you through, within an hour, getting an HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, a very basic web page up and running. Okay, so here we're diving deeper into HTML. If you want to go like through all three of them pretty quickly, you can go through that. And in that trial by fire, you will create a GitHub account and a GitHub code repository. So you should probably go do that now. This information that I'm about to give you might not make sense if you haven't created a code repository. So if you're looking at the screen and you're already confused, go watch the trial by fire before proceeding is my recommendation. Okay, so let's say that you've created a GitHub account, you create a new repository over here, and you come to this code tab on your repository. Now you can click a inactive region. So I can click right here, somewhere where I'm not clicking a button, an inactive region, and push the period key. And it will pop up this code editor in your browser. Okay, and if you've just created your repository, you might not yet have an index file. So create an index.html file. When you do that, it will be blank for you. It'll look like this. And we can ask the question like, how do we know it's an HTML file rather than a text file? Well, because it says .html at the end. That's it. The file extension, you're writing plain text, but the file extension makes your computer and your browser aware that it's hypertext. And then browsers will use it, basically. And so now let's talk about syntax. So what is syntax? Syntax is the collection of characters and their relationship. So by character, we can talk about alphanumeric characters or letters, ABC. We can talk about numbers, 1, 2, 3, and then non-alphanumeric symbols. So question marks. So those would be like grammatical symbols, period, comma, question mark, semicolon. And then there are elements like this element, a left angle bracket, which is typically not considered grammatical. I mean, you might consider it grammatical in some cases. There's the right angle bracket. Here's a backsplash. Here's a left and right bracket. Here's a left and right brace. Some people will call them curly brackets. I call them braces. These are all symbols. They are non-alphanumeric symbols or characters. They are things that you type. And then also space. So whenever I type space, that's also a character. It's a white space character. Or if I push enter, I'm creating a character called a line break. So these are all characters, all right? And remember, syntax is the collection of characters and their relationship. So here, I've highlighted 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 characters, and they are in a special relationship to create a meaningful entity, specifically an HTML tag. So left angle bracket, H1, that would be a tag name, and then right angle bracket, this means that I have created an HTML open tag, and it will have a corresponding HTML close tag. So the tag is a syntax. It's an element of syntax. And the tag is composed of things that I've written, characters, including numeric, alphanumeric, and non-alphanumeric characters in a special relationship, right? So if I had done this, that would not be an HTML tag. Or you could say it's an incorrectly written HTML tag. So it becomes an HTML tag when they are ordered in a particular way. And specifically, you have this character, which means I'm going to begin to write the tag name. You have the tag name itself, which is H1. And then you have this, which says I'm done writing the tag name. And this will define an open tag. Then down here, the backslash in addition makes it a close tag, okay? Now that you have the open tag and the close tag, you also have the tag value, which is between them. And this will be what the user sees. So H1 means the main heading. There should only be one H1 on your whole website, okay? And so you're telling the browser, this is going to be the heading for my website. And then it's like, okay, you've defined the heading, but like, what is the actual text? That's defined as the tag value. So you have the tag, you have the open and close tags, and then you have the tag value between them. All together, this makes an HTML element. So what's the difference between a tag and an element? Basically, if you have an open and close tag together, that makes one element, HTML element. Sometimes we'll say them interchangeably. I might talk about the paragraph element, or the paragraph tag. Technically, this is the paragraph open tag, and this is the paragraph close tag. Informally, I might just call the whole thing the paragraph tag. Does that make sense? And now I've given away what this P does. P is for paragraph. Okay, so here we have the main heading, a paragraph, and then we have a subheading and another subheading down here. And we have an ordered list, step 1, 2, 3 of a banana bread recipe. So these are all HTML elements and HTML tags. Then I have a style attribute, and this is giving style. So when I talked about rich formatting, font size, bold, color, letter spacing, all of these things, we call them style, technically. Formatting is like the sort of English term, but style is the technical term within HTML. And you can see that I've put this inside of the open tag. So that is called an HTML attribute. So HTML attributes go inside of the open tag. This is just a brute fact of syntax. It's how we write HTML. And then what does this do? It will make the whole region light blue. I'll show you what it looks like. Let me open my trial by fire v2. So if you go through the trial by fire, it will tell you how to deploy this using GitHub Pages. But basically, this is what the rendered or deployed form of the website looks like. So this is the code form of the website, and this is the rendered or deployed form. You can see the main heading is bigger, subheadings are big, but not as big. We have that colored background, and then we have the dark goldenrod color name here. And at this point, you might be wondering, like, how do I know that dark goldenrod is a thing? You can, first of all, I started typing dark, and I got predictive. So my tool is helping me know the options. But also, you can just go Google built-in CSS color names. And this is where we fall back on our prior and more important skill of search. So Google will help you list these out. You don't need to memorize them. And then you can also go over to ChatGPT. And ChatGPT can help you, list 3 built-in CSS color names. So it can help you this way, but it can also give you even better information. Okay, so there it says red, yellow, blue. It can give you better information. I can say for colors similar to yellow. Oops, and there I have a typo, but it still understands me. If I had written that into Google, Google would have given me much poorer results. But here, because GPT has this capability of understanding relations between words, that's basically how it works. It knows that gold and khaki and yellow green are all similar to yellow. And it can actually understand that yellow is a common typo of yellow with the W. Thanks for the follow. Mitzi, I'm trying so hard to learn how to do layouts. Yep, it can be tricky, can't it? HTML alone will give you a default rendered layout. It's not going to be particularly good. You're going to want to use CSS together with that. Okay. So core syntax. So we talked about what is a tag name. That would be like P or H1, open tag, close tag, tag attributes, self-closing tags. Okay. So in some cases, mainly in the case of inputs, I can do this, which is a self-closing tag because it has no value inside of it. If you go over here to Google, the input, it has no text in it, right? It'll have text when I type here, but that's a different thing. That's the user input. That's not what you want the computer to display by default. And if you did have it like search here or like type here, if you did want it to have that text by default, with inputs, they are abnormal compared to other HTML elements. And so you would use something called placeholder text. And I could say type here. And notice that that is an HTML attribute, not a value, because the value of the input is what the user has input. So inputs are a little bit different. And but that's a case where you can have a self-closing tag. Actually, the difference of inputs here is one of the big things we talk about forms. So forms are their own topic, basically. The input will be part of a user form. Anytime the user gives information to the computer, as opposed to the computer presenting information to the user, that will be part of a form. So that's jumping ahead a bit, but in any case, that illustrates what a self-closing tag is. Tag nesting, which sounds really intimidating, but it just means, hey, when you have a list of steps, you know that that goes inside of either an unordered list UL or an ordered list container, which is going to tell the computer whether to use like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is an ordered list, or just dots, which is unordered, like in no particular order. So you have a list, but is it ordered or unordered? That is a really good example where you need to nest elements. So nesting refers to the fact that I have one inside the other, as opposed to the case where it's just text as a value. Here, I have elements as values. And that's like all the core syntax you need to know. Here, there's a list of basic tags. So these are going to be really common. It'll be useful for you to know these, but you don't necessarily need to. You can just use Google or ChatGPT or the official documentation. So jumping all the way ahead, the point is not to master HTML. The point is to learn enough to, first of all, do the thing you want to do, which would be build a website, get a job, and prepare you to learn React, which is also in turn going to help you to get a job and build websites that are even cooler. And it's going to make it easy for you. But that's down the road. Here, you want to learn enough HTML to do 3 things. Get ready for that later on. Those 3 things I just mentioned. Build a basic website like this. This is actually a basic website. I don't know if you can, where did I get that link? I guess I closed it. This right here, believe it or not, is a basic website. I can share this link with, my friends or my family, and it's on the open internet. People can go look at it. This is so cool, just joined. Does he teach other stuff besides HTML? In general, I do, but not today. Today is a deep dive on the core components of HTML. So the point is to learn enough to progress, not to quote unquote master the topic. You're not going to master HTML. First of all, there's so much in HTML. Here's the official specification if you want to go look at it. And if you memorize this entire thing, that is an incredibly poor use of your time. And you still won't have mastered it because beyond this, there are ongoing conversations about how to further develop HTML. So we're on HTML5 right now. That's the current modern standard. Before that was 4. And I got news for you, 6 is going to come out in the future. I don't expect the thing to drastically change very quickly, but the point is that these things are continuously changing. So you should be in a continuous learning mindset, not a mastery mindset. Really, really want to push against a mastery mindset. We want to embrace continuous learning. learning enough, practical learning enough to get our project done, project-based learning. Teleological learning, if you want me to use a fancy term, learning so that we're getting something done rather than learning in order to memorize like a bunch of abstract facts that aren't really used for anything. And just-in-time learning. So later, don't be surprised if you run into something which wasn't covered here. That's totally expected. And you should fall back on your search to learn it just in time. So the 80-20 rule, you're going to get more than 80% if you can learn these 8. And then the 9th is just like, and there's still stuff. You're not a master yet. Don't get egotistical. Don't walk into your interview and say like, I learned these 8 things. I'm the master of HTML. That's going to be a bad interview for you. And in fact, I'll give you a couple examples. Basically, they're going to be specialty tags. You're not going to see them very often. But here's a couple that you might want to use even in your own capstone project later on. Media rendering elements like a video tag. So if you want to embed video in your website, there's a special HTML tag for that. If you want an audio player, if you want to upload a song and play a song, I have a project that uses one of these. Let's see if I can find it. I did a Thanksgiving micro project, a really small one. Portfolio highlights, vanilla flat white, the stolen turkey. I don't know if you're able to hear that on the recording. Well, when you click the turkey, it makes a gobble noise. And so that's because there's an audio player in the HTML back there. Do you have a AI logo generate? I don't have a special one. You could use GPT-4 for that if you like. How much can someone who knows HTML make? Not very much. Knowing HTML by itself is not going to be very useful. You might be able to build emails, maybe. But I would encourage you to learn CSS and JavaScript as well. Frankly, I'd encourage you to learn full stack development with TypeScript, which is the main curriculum recommended on the Latterly standard checklist. You can go sign up for Latterly for free now. For as little as $1 a month, you can unlock the advanced checklist with more tips to empower your job search and even more on the premium tier. You can join the Discord, right? I'm only going to be here for another 5 minutes, but if I don't get to your questions, you can always join the Discord and ask questions. Okay. So we jumped a bit ahead to the humility piece. What it is, the core syntax, semantic tags. Basically, all of the tags you heard about are semantic. A heading is semantic. What does semantic mean? Semantic means of the word or meaningful. So it's a meaningful HTML element as opposed to a generic or meaningless element. And the main one you need to watch out for is div. Div just means division or part of the screen. It's a region of the screen. It's a generic term. Could be any part of the screen. It could have anything in it. And it's not semantic. It's meaningless. It's meaningless other than the fact that it means like some part of the screen. Almost always you should consider whether there is a semantic alternative. For example, here, this is bad code. And it's bad code for a number of reasons. One reason would be we generally don't support inline style. We prefer to have style in its own style tag. And so I would select it like this, or I might do some other CSS selector. That's out of scope for today. But the point there was to illustrate what is an HTML attribute. Okay. But here, this should not be a div is another reason that this is not good code. This could be an article. Because if you notice, I have a heading, how to make banana bread, and then I have the steps about how to make banana bread. Really, this is its own article. Or perhaps you could say section. I think article would probably be better. That would be my opinion. So in any case, anytime you write a div, you want to wonder whether something else could be used instead. Another thing that you can do with div is style fixing. So here, this website looks terrible. It is a website, but it's not a very good website. And it looks bad for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is there's an awkward gap on the left of the word how. You could use a div to fix that. You could create a region and give that a light blue background, and it would not have any information to the user. It would purely be for positional or coloring or styling purposes. And that could be an appropriate use of the div. except for the fact that I could also do it with CSS. So there are cases where you should prefer CSS instead of HTML, and that can eliminate our non-semantic div tag if I add specifically some padding over there or perhaps some width to the whole element. So you can use div when there's no other alternative, but that's going to be pretty rare. And it will typically just be for positional assistance if you want to like move an element a little bit. Okay. ARIA attributes and accessibility. So if I have an image, let's say I go over here to Google. Here's an image, right? This should have alt text, ALT. And here we can see it says Lunar New Year 2024. That's very good alt text. Kudos, Google. And what that means is it's an alternative. As opposed to viewing the image, you can listen to the words. And this is to assist non-sighted users. So when we talk about accessibility, we're talking about helping people who are non-traditional viewers of our website understand what's in the website. So for someone who can't see, they can't see an image. So you want to provide alt text so that they can understand what that content on the screen is. You also want to use ARIA attributes for the same purpose. Typically, ARIA attributes will be on non-images. They'll be for like buttons, for example, or links. And so this is a big thing in HTML you want to know is how to assist non-traditional users, non-sighted users, and so forth. Checkham says, so their screen reader can read it out loud using the alt text. Exactly, that's right. HTML isn't a programming language, y'all. That's true. It's a markup language. You still need to know it as a developer. Forms, I'm not going to dive into how to develop forms, but you get the highlight of what they are. So searching here would be user inputting information. Whenever the user inputs information, that's a form. You might also think about a login form or an order form on a restaurant menu. The way you're picking in DoorDash, you're picking your food, right? That's a user form. All right, SEO and title, we actually talked about this earlier when I talked about how to see banana bread. It's not, this content is not in the page, it's using a meta description. There's literally an HTML tag, which is meta. And then I think it's type. Anyway, there's some attribute on it. Here, let's ask ChatGPT. Write a meta description HTML tag. Name, yeah, it's not type. So you'll have a meta tag with an attribute called name and then a content value. And that's how you support SEO. That's search engine optimization. And render order. Let's see, built-in style and render order. We'll cover both of these. So here, notice that I have an H1, but I didn't give it a background color or anything like that. Yet somehow when I visit the page, it's larger. That's because it has built-in style. Chrome itself, my browser, and it might be slightly different on Safari, but Chrome itself has some default way of showing up the headings or rendering them or displaying them. Okay, it's good to be aware of those. Particularly, we want to know which of these will display as blocks and which of these will not display as blocks. And that's something that we can dive further into with CSS. What does it matter if it's a block style display or not? And then render order. Basically just knowing that like when you write the things at the top, they'll show up at the top. If I write this H2 below the H1, the H2 will show up further down the page. This is the render order. One of the things that's really, and we also sometimes call this the structure of the page. One of the things that's really important here when you get to JavaScript is that if you have a large JavaScript file up top, the user doesn't see your JavaScript code. So it just looks like a blank white page while they're waiting for all that JavaScript to download. So typically we recommend having the JavaScript script tag at the bottom so that your HTML shows up really, really fast. It looks like you have a fast website, and then the JavaScript comes later. That is all you need to know. I already talked about humility over mastery and the special cases for like audio and video. There might be other special cases that you might want to dive into on an as needed, just in time basis. But if you can get these down, and you should be able to get these down in a week or two, or maybe less than a week for some people, then you should be able to proceed to CSS. CSS, we've already gotten a preview. Background color light blue is CSS. The fact that I use the style attribute here allows me to use CSS inline, we say, but that's not an ideal practice. So your next step would be to improve that by learning about CSS. And then what if I told you the user could change the color of the website over time, like click a button to toggle light mode and dark mode? That sort of interactivity and page control comes with JavaScript, which comes last. And that really, those three components will enable you to do everything you need to do to build a very complex website. Trust me, it gets really complex if you want it to. But it can be simple as that if you want it to. Hope this has been an interesting message. If so, subscribe to the page, and I will see you next time.